Hello, and welcome to another episode of Digging a Little Deeper into English with Kirsten, where we will investigate what successful language learners have done in order to transform their communication and make that career change they were looking for.
It is my great pleasure today to talk to someone I consider to be a good friend, Flor. Flor came out to Australia as part of BHP Billiton Graduate Development Program in the early 2000s. When she arrived at the site in North Queensland in Australia, she had flawless English. I would describe her as definitely fluent, yet she still had some communication difficulties. Regional Australia has some unique stylings, and these presented her some challenges. She was part of a bigger graduate development program, and we ended up having a group of 10 or so graduates working on this program at Queensland Nickel site. And they all had to work with me for a period of time in learning some technical background to how the site was operating. And we all became quite a close support group. I watched all of them embrace the struggles of relocating internationally, and I watched them all manage to not just overcome the difficulties, but absolutely empower their careers and take them off to great levels. So, Flor is someone I greatly admire, and you can listen to her story today and get some tips from her about what she did and how she managed to turn this situation into something very rewarding. So, join me now. Hi, Flor. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, Kirsten.
It's been a while. I haven't spoken to you for, well, face to face on camera for a long time now.
No, probably 10 years.
Probably
Maybe, I
has.
think. Yeah. Yeah, I think it has been 10 years. We have been chatting sporadically, but yeah.
Yeah, not recorded on podcasts anyway.
No, no.
So, thank you so much for agreeing to have this chat with me. Um, I already mentioned that I would have described your English as fluent when you arrived in Australia, but you were placed in North Queensland in Australia, who are very famous for having very strong regional Australian accents. So, why don't you talk to me a little bit about how you found that?
Well, when I first came to Australia, I actually flew to Perth and I stayed here for a week.
Mhm.
And I didn't have any issues with the English language here. Basically, I can't even tell accents too much. Like for now, if you show me someone speaking in English in a different accent, I cannot tell where they came from. So probably coming to Perth, it was the same. Like I just couldn't tell. But going to North Queensland was a different story. It was just completely, I felt like they were speaking a completely different language than English. And they were speaking English. I just couldn't understand the accent. Either they were very fast or they were drawling. And it was a drawl that I wasn't familiar with. I can't really describe it. It's just rolling some of the words. So probably I understood like 75% of what most people were saying, and then maybe 20% of what some of the other people were saying, especially operators.
Yeah.
Not that I'm
So
like, but yeah,
the older men who had
yes.
been working in the industry have perfected that accent, and I have found them hard to understand at times as well, not being a North Queenslander.
Yeah, and I think I've got this perpetually confused look when I was talking to operators. They were
Yeah,
very, they would just repeat it, but they repeated it at the same speed in the same accent. So it was just trying to pick, oh, okay, that was the word he said. Yeah.
So what did you do to try and overcome those communication difficulties? Did you have to rely on written communication more,
Written
or
was actually better. I think that's why I started to prefer emails in terms of communication because there's no accent in emails. You can just understand it. Spoken, though, you can't really get away with it when you're talking to operators. Most of the time, they're quite patient. I think it helped that I was a graduate during that time and they knew that I was learning and they knew that I came from another country. Most of them were just surprised that I can actually speak English and they could understand me. Um, so I
your
think that
English was
helped.
very good?
So I think that helped a bit. The problem was I understood half of what everyone else was saying. So they were quite patient. There were a few that were just like not that patient, but in general, a lot of people were quite good in trying to explain again what they've just said. And like over a year or 2 years, I got used to the accent that I've started just understanding everyone and forgot that they've got a different accent. It's only when I moved back to Perth that I realized that, oh my God, North Queensland really has a different accent.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. I My accent changes when I move from one place to another. If I'm speaking with someone from the north part of Australia and Darwin's another place, it's quite similar to
Ah,
Townsville for accent, then my accent changes. It's very different to
wow.
my accent in Melbourne.
Oh, wow.
I don't
Yeah.
even think about it. It
Yeah,
just
it just
happens.
changes. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. So now you've terrified everyone who's considering relocating to North Queensland in Australia.
It's not as terrifying as the drop bear, so it's okay.
The drop bears.
Yeah, yeah.
Why don't you share with people what drop bears are? They're quite funny.
Oh, apparently it's they live in North Queensland, and if you go through the woods or something, that you're just gonna get drop bears falling. And I'm very gullible, so I thought that was actually true until someone said no, they're just like pulling your leg.
It's a
Um,
joke that
yeah, as a joke. Oh God, drop
Australians
bear.
play
Yeah,
on foreigners,
yeah,
koalas that fall out of trees on people.
yeah,
They're not real, that's for sure.
yeah.
So, what advice would you give someone who was considering coming to Australia, maybe in a regional area? Because let's be honest, most
Mhm.
people who get visas for working in mining in Australia will be in regional areas
Yeah,
and experiencing these accents.
yeah. I don't really have any advice except for just don't be shy in
Mm,
asking people to repeat what they've said if you don't understand it and just be honest about it. Most people are actually quite accommodating. It's very rare that you'll find someone who would get annoyed at you for trying to clarify something, especially if they know that English is not your first language. Because even, for example, even here in Perth, I use that excuse a lot and say, English is my second language, so just deal with it. And they just laugh because,
yeah, we're Australian. We laugh
yeah,
at everything.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's just that. Just be patient. You will get used to it. And the other one is make sure that you ask for clarification and don't try to just live in a world where you didn't understand 60% of what everyone was saying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you came out with, you were one of the very first people to
Yeah.
come out, but there was a whole group of you. So
Mhm.
by the end, I think the graduates, it was a graduate program that was
Yeah.
sponsored with BHP
Yeah.
Billiton. There was, I was trying to count the other day, I think about 10 of you.
11. Yeah. There were
11.
11 of
Okay. Oh,
us. Yeah.
sorry, I've missed
Yeah.
someone there.
There there was an
Indonesian,
Indonesian, yeah.
Russian.
Two Russians, and then the rest were Colombians.
Were
There
they
were
all
quite a
Colombians or were they throughout South America? I can't
I
remember.
think they were all Colombians, or maybe, yeah, South Americans, maybe. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And I noticed that some of the languages had more difficulty with
Mm,
English than
yeah.
others, and now I understand why. So there's two different types of languages. One is the stress timed language, and one's a syllable timed language. So English, the
Mhm,
way we put our words together is syllable timed. It's very rhythmic. Some words we
mhm,
drop off, some words we lengthen to keep a rhythm. And some
yeah.
languages are not like that at all. And Spanish is one of the big ones. I did
Ah,
notice that the graduates from Latin America seem to struggle with English a little bit more than than the others. Did you I mean you were inside, I was not
yeah,
inside
yeah.
with you guys. Did you
Um,
think that as well?
I think it was similar. For example, for the Russian graduates and the South American graduates, it was similar level of difficulty.
Mm,
Um, you could tell that some of them were struggling with trying to um, translate what they were thinking in their head in their native language to English. Um, and I think it's more just exposure to the language. So if you weren't speaking it in your country prior to that, you will always struggle because with everything, it just comes with practice. Those people now who used to struggle initially on their first year in Australia now speak perfect English because it's been a
yes.
couple of yeah.
And they're all senior people in very high places offering me
Yes.
jobs.
Yes.
So they've leapfrogged and off they go. Yeah, they've got amazing careers.
Yeah, yeah.
And most of them are still in Australia. I know of
Yeah,
one
yeah,
who's returned back home, two
yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
But
yeah.
they've all stayed in Australia, which is great for Australia.
Yeah, so I really think it's really just time and practice, and
Mm.
uh, just like with everything else, you get used to it when you're doing it for a longer time.
And do you think there's something they can do in order to prepare themselves before they come?
Well, obviously, trying to get some English language lessons would probably be good if you that is not your first or second language. If you can't speak it fluently or write it well, is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Taking tutorial lessons will always be good because I'm going to use my experience in studying French for this one. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to study in France when I was in the Philippines, and to be able to learn the language and actually be fluent in it, I had to take classes in the Philippines, and they were weekly classes. They're not just written classes; they were actually conversational ones as well. So trying to do studies and then practice with native speakers of the language is absolutely
Mm.
helpful.
Okay. And did you do anything while you were learning French, like watching movies in French or
Yes.
one,
So
listening
yeah,
to
watching
radio?
movies in
Yeah,
French, going to restaurants that
that's a good
basically
idea.
yeah, going to restaurant like French restaurants
Yeah.
where the menus are French, you have to order in French. Yeah, so just really trying to incorporate it into your life. Obviously, not 100% if you're not in that position, but as much
Hmm.
as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And do you still speak any French? Do you still
Not anymore
practice?
because it's been 12 years. I can understand some of it. So when we went to Paris, I can speak basic French, and I
Hmm.
can understand most of what everyone is saying, but speaking it is a completely different, yeah, it's completely different because I haven't spoken it in 12 years.
Excellent. I'm going to make an observation. Your
Okay.
English is so different. Like we said, it's been maybe 10 years since normally we talk on electronic means. We don't
Yeah,
normally talk face
in
to
person.
face.
Yeah, yeah.
And your English is your accent is so much different.
Is
It's
it?
yeah,
I thought it
it's
was still the same.
no, no, your words, I would say I guess it's faster, but you're connecting your speech, you've picked up all of the native speech patterns from English,
Oh,
which
really?
you didn't have before. But
Oh,
I've
because
been
I'm always
listening and I don't hear the slang.
ah no, I don't think I've picked up any Australian accent or slang. Because when I first came here to Australia, the first thing that the HR guy from Queensland Nickel was saying to
Hmm,
me was, "Oh, are you from America? Because you sound American." And
I
I'm
said
like,
that
"You
to you as
hired
well.
me. You know where I came from." So I've always had the you have an American accent.
Hmm.
No one's ever got an Australian accent. So yeah. So
No, but
I did
uh,
realize that it's actually changed.
yeah, yeah. It's not even, I mean, you still have that slight American sound to it, but um, but yeah, your speech patterns have become significantly more native Australian.
Oh, yeah. Probably because I don't even speak to any Filipinos now.
I was going
Very
to ask,
rarely.
when you're back in the Philippines, is it just as easy to speak in Tagalog?
Yes, it is still, but I haven't
Okay.
been to the Philippines in 3 years because of COVID.
COVID. Mm.
Yeah. So I haven't been able to practice my Filipino, but it's very easy because obviously when I see my friends here, but it's only like every quarter or every few months that I see my Filipino friends. But if Jess was with us, like my partner, we would still be speaking in English because obviously she can only speak English.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
And in the Philippines, English is very broadly
Common.
spoken.
Yeah.
Very common. Mm.
Yeah.
When I went back to Australia, I had not been back for 3 years as well. Thank you, COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And my parents, who are Australian and very
Yeah.
direct, the first thing they said to me, we just got back from the airport. Um,
Yeah.
we just got back to their house having a coffee, and
Yeah.
my stepmother said to me, "What's happened to your accent?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean? What's happened to my accent? I still sound Australian."
I
But my
know it's
speech patterns have changed as well. After
oh,
living in non-native English speaking
yeah.
countries for so long, I've had
Yeah.
to disconnect my words and take all of the speech patterns out of my um, communication. And I've just noticed you've put them in. So it's very
Oh,
easy in time to adapt.
yeah. Ah, I didn't even notice it.
Yeah,
But my partner does tell me that when I speak to the dogs, I have a very different English accent.
they're not native English speaking, apparently.
No. Like she said, oh, when you speak to the dogs in English, it's a completely different accent. And I said, it's probably the Filipino accent because I try to speak to them in Filipino as well. So I don't know. And you just like switch very quickly without noticing it.
All right. There's one other thing that I want to touch on, and
Okay.
that is cultural communication. And I can remember very, very clearly when you arrived in Australia, I probably teased you a little bit about how direct Australians are and how indirect Filipinos are.
I know.
And yeah, you remember how I would challenge you to say no,
Yeah.
that you
Oh, I still
found
have a
that.
problem saying no. Well, not as much as before, but yeah.
I was going to ask you. So, Filipinos are very indirect communicators, very polite, very gentle with their
Mhm.
language, and Australians are not
Blunt.
very
Yeah.
blunt, often
Yes.
considered rude in
Yeah.
other cultures because we are so blunt, although we would hate to think we're being rude.
Yeah.
How are you finding the cultural communication now? Are you an
Oh, it's a lot.
effective no sayer yet?
At work, I'm a very effective no sayer.
Excellent.
That
Good.
has completely switched. Yeah. I think again, it comes with experience and practice, and because of the type of job that you need to do, you can't just accept everything or be very indirect about things, especially if you're managing a lot of people. But yeah, initially it was quite a struggle because I felt that people were not really just being very rude, but just very blunt.
Okay.
Which was good in a way because I'm kind of like that. I just don't say it out loud. I'm just nicer in person. But I'm like, yeah, okay, but I'm still not gonna do it. But just not direct enough. But yeah, no, I've kind of appreciated that now because it saves a lot of time and effort in trying to figure out what someone is trying to say and what they're willing and capable of doing. So I've
Yes.
got a better appreciation of it rather than waste time with conversations that go nowhere because someone just doesn't want to say no or just is trying to be nice about it.
Yeah.
It's safer.
It's actually one of the things, I mean, one of the struggles I had when I left Australia and went to work in Asia.
Yeah.
I was offending everyone because I was being direct and they didn't understand direct communication. So I had to learn very quickly to
Yeah.
be less direct, to be
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
But also the people who would work on my team, I would have a very honest conversation and ask them to be more direct with me because I couldn't understand. I I didn't know whether they didn't want to do something or were not able to do something. And
Yeah.
I needed to know that to be
Yeah.
able to help them.
Yeah.
I couldn't help
Exactly.
them if I didn't
Yeah.
understand. So
Yeah, just the directness has now like removed any ambiguity. And like before where it's like you don't know whether you're right, whether it's a capability or a willingness issue. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That's been the hardest thing for me about living in Asia is
Yeah.
how to be indirect and effective. I really had to work hard
Yeah.
at that. Excellent. So that's probably taken up enough of your very, very busy schedule. But before we finish, is there anything last minute advice or tips that you want to share about people who might be considering moving overseas, but your experience is Australia? So anything to give advice?
No, I think nothing that I haven't said before. One is obviously try to be prepared before going
Mm-hmm.
overseas, like at least learn the basics of the language. People are always, I found, always helpful when you're trying and you're
Mm.
asking for help rather than just closing off and not even attempting to help or attempting to learn the language. And over time, with practice and with time, it will get better. That's really just it, I think.
Would you recommend people do it?
Absolutely. Like right now, I'm considering moving to Italy, and I don't know Italian.
That sounds awesome. When you're there, I'm not too far away in Egypt. Let me know and I will come and visit
Yeah,
and drink
I've
coffee.
already gotten I've already gotten just on board with the Europe thing, moving to Europe thing. So yeah, you just have to choose a country.
Excellent. None of us sit still very long, do we?
No.
Well, thank you again. It was super awesome to catch up with you. And
Thank you.
best of luck with these potential moves overseas again. Maybe we'll see each other face to face somewhere outside of Australia.
No.
Well, that's it for our interview today. To download a transcript of the audio, click the link below. You'll find it in the show notes. Don't forget, if you want to be notified when the next great interview with successful non-native English professionals in the mining industry is released, click subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. And if you are ready to take control of your English, transform your communication skills, and see that payback in your career, then shoot me an email at ksdsmith@gmail.com or visit me on LinkedIn. The links are again below in the show notes. Until the next episode, take care and keep on digging.